Today we're talking about the challenges of being in a relationship while doing the trauma work. I personally believe that partnership is one of the greatest opportunities for healing and awakening, but the growth journey is often marked by periods of isolation, alienation, and temporary destabilization. So how do we balance this desire for intimacy as opposed to the need for private space during heavy processing? Well, today I'll hopefully be answering Alison's question and offering you a few suggestions about creating something like a conscious relationship, but also honoring your individual needs and not feeling like you're dragging your partner along a process that they don't want to be a part of. Because I'm going to make an assumption for this very general video that you, as a particular individual, are likely always the person in any relationship that you're in who is more interested in healing, awakening, growth, and working on themselves. In a broad sense, you're always the person who wants to have the conversation, who's more likely to do the reading and probably stays up late at night watching videos like this one. And you might have moments where you're reflecting on your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your wife or your husband, and they're watching TV, or they're going out again with friends, or they're just doing more work at the office. And months go by and you've done your healing work and you feel, they're not pulling their weight. They're not really taking this as seriously as I am. So what do we do from this foundation? Of course, it's a generalization, but I think it's an accurate generalization that 95% of people who are going to click on a video like this will always have that experience, probably for a good decade, maybe even 2 decades of dating or romance or whatever it is in your personal history. You always feel like the one who is leading the way in regards to healing. How do we practically get you healthier and get the relationship healthier? Well, there's a few things that we need to establish as foundation. I'm going to assume that you're dating someone who's at the very least interested in working on the relationship. If you're dating someone who clearly would rather go out and party, spend time working at the office for the sake of money to then be spent on material possessions, or otherwise completely trapped in neurotic and destructive behaviors that harm you and the relationship, someone who's constantly arguing, someone who's constantly withdrawing, someone who has a tendency towards coldness or hostility in any form and seems immune to the conversations around, I don't think this is working. Of course, you can own up your side of the relationship. Maybe there's ways that you could communicate which would be less aggressive or more direct, depending on what you need. Some people are way too hot and way too penetrating. Other people need to actually put their hands up and say, well, I haven't really brought up that this is even an issue that I care about, so how could your partner possibly know that you're struggling with something that you haven't articulated? Let's assume that that foundation is there, where you're dating someone who is willing to do the work with you. If you're not dating that kind of person, this video is not going to be very useful from this point going forwards, and I strongly suggest that you start having these conversations. If the inner work is truly important to you, you probably won't be able to date someone for a long-term period of committed partnership if they're not interested in healing, growth, and probably some spiritual aspects of life as well. Let's continue with the video. Assuming the foundation is there of them being willing to do the work, Alison, who's today's questioner, asked about this need to have their own space to process and integrate. And I paused on this and thought, why is that an issue? Because in my personal relationships and in the relationships of every client that I work with, there's never a moment where they're saying, Jordan, I really wanted to do the reading this week, but I had to spend more time with my girlfriend, and, we were watching films and we went out to this party. I don't exist in that reality. The kind of people that I work with are so deeply committed to the process that they've already had pre-communicative conversations with their partners, female clients and male clients, where it's, look, I'm going to be reading for 2 hours per day. I've got this session with Jordan and let's say Saturday at 9 o'clock. I need you to be out of the house, or at the very least in a different room. I need the space. I need the privacy. This is my healing path, and these people obviously benefit from that space. And I thought, why is this a question in Alison's mind? I reflected, well, maybe That's actually more of a common pattern, that when people are together a lot of the time, maybe a bit too much of the time, it feels difficult to separate. Maybe there's a codependency element or a shared comfort element of having an easy routine where you both finish your work for the day and spend 4 hours maybe having dinner, watching a show, this kind of normal thing. And it's almost embarrassing for me to imagine that this is a normal thing, because I don't interact with people who do this as their normal routine. My normal that I'm exposed to in my life, in my friends' lives, and in the lives of my clients are people who are deeply committed to private, introspective practice. And they get partnerships where they get to do this work together. So if that's the issue, if the real issue is that you don't get enough time for yourself and you don't get the time for the reading, you don't have enough energy available for that process, that journaling, that meeting with the therapist because you're always hanging out with your partner, surely that's just a conversation about, I need more time for myself, and you go through that conversation. That seems quite accessible. And if they have a particularly violent or strange response, and they might be like, do you not love me anymore? Why do you want to spend all your time reading books about somatic healing and not coming and hanging out with me? Then, that's a moment for healing in itself. I imagine that most people watching this video won't struggle with that. If you say it strongly but compassionately, I need time for this is important for me, someone who genuinely loves you will understand that. A man who needs to go spend time with his male friends for a men's weekend in the woods, or a woman that needs to go to a weekly sister circle, or go to her acupuncturist, or go out for a solo hike in nature. If they're in a healthy relationship, their partner's going to understand that the two of them, as individuals, in their autonomy, will be a much healthier, happier relationship, because they're distinct entities. Distinct people get to interact with each other and give the best of themselves to each other when they're not so closely together. It's the cliche of distance makes the heart grow stronger, or grow fonder. Maybe it does make the heart grow stronger. Distance makes the heart grow stronger and fonder, because two individuals on their own path, choosing to weave together and create something as a third thing, their relationship, their marriage, maybe a family life. That's very exciting. It's something that I expect from all of my relationships, romantic and non-romantic, and also in a professional sense. It's this idea of individual autonomy coming together to work through the third relational space of them together. What we need to really address is ultimately this question of not how do I get the time for myself, but actually how much time are they willing to put into the inner work. Unfortunately, as I've said in several videos on this channel, you can never make somebody do the healing work. Not only would it be disvalidating or abrupt or even insensitive to demand that someone goes into trauma-based space if they're not ready for it. Let's imagine that you're dating someone who has an experience in their childhood that you don't know about, and you're being very demanding about them doing the inner child work, and they know that they're not psychically robust enough to go into that abusive memory. That's very difficult territory to operate in. They need to genuinely want to do the work themselves, which usually means, for most people, unfortunately, they need to have gone through a little bit of pain, or usually a lot of pain, some kind of rock bottom moment, getting fired from a job, getting 50 pounds overweight, losing a significant portion of money, sabotaging a family relationship, whatever the case may be, until they get the personal awakening moment of, I'm the problem. I'm actually the problem. This 20th argument in a row with my wife, I think I'm the problem. This issue at work where there's always this competitive, aggressive, anxious give and take with, it's me, I'm the one that's always instigating, until they have that natural moment of revelation. They're not going to be committed to the path of working through their trauma and growing towards a healthier state as an individual, let alone within the relationship. But there's a bit of a nuanced territory that can be useful for you if you want to take something practical to actually encourage them. You can let them know, in as much of a compassionate way as possible, that this isn't working out. Not that you're going to break up with them, but something like, I'll model the conversation. Let's imagine I'm talking to a romantic partner and I'm noticing that they have a certain pattern, let's say around avoidance of communication. They're avoiding communication, and I have a moment where I get on the phone or meet them in person and say, I've noticed that in the last few conversations where we've been talking about this certain painful moment, let's say they've got an issue with, I don't know, it's hard to try and bring something up. Let's imagine that they've got an issue with always spending all their money on clothes. Nice neutral example. And I bring up, hey, it seems like you're spending a lot of money on clothes. I'm wondering if there's something missing that is maybe trying to be filled up with the clothing. I know the style's really important for you, but it's getting a bit excessive. Are you seeing this the same way that I'm seeing this? That crucial element there, are you seeing this the same way that I'm seeing this? Am I understanding this correctly? Help me understand what you're going through. And then you listen to them, and you really listen to them, and they're saying, well, no, I buy the clothes because I just want to blah, 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 blah. Imagine 2 hours of conversation. Fantastic. You might get to the point of resolution. But what happens if you bring that up, and then they do the, oh, no, it's all fine, don't worry about it? Half a dozen times in a row, over the course of a month, there needs to be a moment where you courageously step up and say, I don't want to have this conversation again and feel like I'm being abandoned or avoided. This means a lot to me, and this is a really tricky, sensitive part. I can imagine that if we don't resolve this in the next 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, I'm going to start feeling mistrustful of your word, and it's going to lead me to a feeling of unsafety that will really hurt the quality of our relationship. And this relationship means so much to me that I don't want to even consider the possibility of us growing distant. Something like that. Something like the framing around, you mean so much to me, and this pattern is really, really not working anymore. I'm here for you in the process. It's not, in 6 months I'm going to break up with you because you're a piece of excrement and you can't figure out, why don't you get yourself in check? Why don't you organize your life? It's more of an energy of, I can see that this is really a problem right now. I know that you don't want to address it. I can see that if we keep leaving this for longer and longer, it's going to get worse and worse. I'm here for you, but I'm also assertively and compassionately establishing a boundary in the future that if you don't meet me in this work, it's realistically going to harm my love for you. It's going to harm my feeling of safety. It's going to harm how committed I can be to this relationship going forwards. I think that's a really healthy way of having a difficult conversation, especially if it's related to trauma work. Maybe this imaginary partner who has this shopping addiction has a shopping addiction because when they were 8 years old, they had a mom that would always dress them in their most expensive, girly, delightful outfits. And she got the lesson that she was only worthy of love when she's wearing the latest, most fashionable clothing. And we've never had that conversation before. So me to my imaginary partner, if they let that little moment came through of just, let's imagine they're talking, it's getting a bit heated just before they're about to withdraw. And they say, oh, it's just something that I've always done since my mom used to buy those clothes for me. And they go, wait, no. What did you just say there? I said, it's just something that I've always done from when my mom used to buy those dresses for me. That's interesting. I didn't know this. Did your mom used to buy these dresses and put you in? And then the conversation starts to open. It's a bit jagged, me trying to make this theatrical example of the imaginary situation, but the principle of being patient with the trauma, being patient with that process of pain, establishing a boundary in the future of we need to address these things, and if we don't address these things, I can realistically expect that the relationship quality is going to diminish, but then being actively engaged, as you've always been in probably all of your relationships, being the one who's generally more inquisitive, generally more interested in growth, probably quite bookish as well. You want to learn, you want to study, you want to understand why things work. Take that energy, wrap it in as much love as possible, create a patient timeline, still create the timeline, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, don't know what you want to do personally, and just see what happens. There needs to be a little bit of a consequence. This is a healthy masculine principle. It's not to be confused with an ultimatum. I don't want you going to your partner and saying, if you don't fix this issue with your shopping addiction within 1 week, then I'm out of here. You're the toxic one. That's a ridiculous pattern. But even a variation of that, of if you don't fix this energy within 3 months, I'm out of here. Even if you're giving 3 months or a year, the way that you're addressing that is not safety encouraging. It's much better to say, I'm really concerned about growing distant from you. This relationship means the world to me. Would you like to work through this together? Because I can see that it's really getting in the way. Just having that energy. Where does it take us in terms of group trauma work or collective trauma work? As the two of you as a group of individuals, and I think the reason I say group is that it's not just the two of you. It's you as a woman or a man, and them as a woman or a man, and your inner children, and your subpersonalities, and the archetypes that you draw down in a more transpersonal, esoteric sense. If you don't understand yourself as an individual to a good enough degree, you're not going to be able to bring yourself forwards with consistency in a healthy, safe relationship. This is why the classic narcissist codependent dynamic comes about, where they're both playing this false self-persona game, and no one's really being themselves. No one's actually close to their heart. It's just images and persona. When you both start to do inner child work and you both realize your core archetypal influences, the woman realizes that she's got quite a aggressive, business-like, almost Athena-like energy at work, but when she's at home, she kind of wants to be a bit more of a Demeter, housewife, loving, nurturing, motherly figure. And the husband realizes, I'm actually more of an artistic, playful, kind of mischievous person in the outer world. When it comes to my home life, I'm definitely more of a organized, structured, I want to be in control kind of guy. So they can figure out what their individual temperaments are and how they work together through their own internal private practice, spending enough time alone, which practically means maybe you both get the time in the morning or time in the evening and you can consciously communicate. Throughout the day, they come into the room, you're still reading a book. I picked up the first book there. We've got nice transpersonal psychology book by Michael Washburn. I actually do highly recommend this book. But let's imagine that you're reading your book. Like, that's why I'm so screwed up. Fantastic. Oh my, that's painful. Oh, and they come in and they want to watch a film with you. You can say lovingly, I really enjoy spending time with you. I've got another 2 chapters left here, and I think I'm going to actually need a little bit more time to just go for a walk because there's some really heavy stuff here. Is that okay with you? And they have whatever their response is. It's just communicating as often as you can that this means a lot to you. And if you really want the ultimate perspective of how to encourage a conscious relationship, you need to lead the way via action, example, and embodiment. This is the closing point for the video. There's no way that you can reasonably demand or reasonably expect that your partner, your friend, or if you're a professional, your client is going to make any significant change towards the direction that you say you want to go down if you're not actually walking the path. They need to see you reading every day. They need to see you looking after your body, going to the gym, eating the right kinds of foods, hanging around with healthy friends, and having a generally positive energy most of the time, but also being able to communicate consciously when you're struggling with something that's heavy. If you're generally quite uplifting and you're generally in that I can do it healing energy, but also have the ability to communicate when you're struggling, i.e., let's go back to the example. You're reading in the book and you just, for whatever reason, I'm not going to cry on camera. I'm not that good at acting, but let's imagine that I'm crying and something happens and your partner comes in and they want to watch a film. If they're calibrated, they're going to realize you're crying and they're not going to even mention the fact, let's watch a film. Do you want to watch Dumb and Dumber? Like a ridiculous example. If for some reason the emotions are so strong that you just lose the ability to communicate and you're like, get out of here, and you're kind of in the trauma and it's really, really heavy. If you've pre-communicated with your partner, I'm going to be reading a book about childhood abuse, and I'm going to be reading it like this between 10 and 12 in the morning, whatever works for you, or before bed, or whatever it may be. It's likely to bring up a lot of intense emotions. I want you to be around in the space. I don't need you to do anything. But if you do come in and I seem a bit cold or a bit hostile, it's really not to do with you. I'm just trying to work through something. If you can get the safety in that kind of relational moment, fantastic. I suppose there's many different ways that I could bring about different tips and tricks of building a conscious relationship, fundamental principle that you build everything from is you lead the way. You've always led the way. You've always been more interested in creating a better life. So keep doing that, but with more extra communication around the edges and also the ability to assert boundaries and establish potential timelines and be patient up until the point where maybe it's not working anymore, which is a whole different topic about how to uncouple from a relationship. Maybe if people leave comments in the comment description about conscious breakups and how to do a breakup, I will do a video on that in the future. Let me know if that's something you want to know about. Otherwise, let's build healthier relationships by being the healthy role model within the relationship, communicating with courage, communicating with compassion, and communicating with assertion the amount of time that you need alone, and not feeling guilty that you need the time alone to heal your own trauma, because of course you do. In the same way that all of my clients, I can't think of an example in recent times where a client said to me, "Sorry, Jordan, I didn't do the assigned accountability for the week, or actually I'm going to cancel the session because my boyfriend or girlfriend wants to go and do X, Y, or Z." It never happens because they've invested time, money, and also the mutual agreement between the two of us. I don't change around my sessions wherever possible. It's 4 months of meeting at the same time. That's the idea. The idea is we show up together, and that's sacred for them. If your healing journey becomes sacred and it feels like something which is precious and important in the same way that hopefully you drink water and eat healthy food every day, people around you will start to respect that as well. It's almost like your energy imprint will indicate that this is truly something which cannot be dismissed and needs to be participated in. And it starts to rub off on people. Don't know what that timeline will be for you as an individual in your particular relationship, but I hope this video has helped. Leave comments in the comments description or comments box if you want any more topics around relationships and relational space. I don't do many videos on this, but I'm sure it'll be quite a popular video. And in the meantime, next video is over here. It probably isn't about relationships, but it's almost certainly about your relationship to yourself. So let's start over there.